There's often a tendency to conflate success with happiness. And certainly, as I write in the book, I was very, very guilty of falling into that trap, right? I said, look, um, if I'm successful, which means there'll be achievement, reward, recognition, then I'll feel happy. And the reason that happens is very early, like Pavlov's dog, you get conditioned. So you do well in school, the teacher's happy, the the other students look up to you, your parents are proud of you, and they give you a new toy. Okay? And right from those early days, you get on this path of if you do well and succeed and do what people expect of you, you'll get rewarded. If you don't do it, you'll get punished. Then you go show up at a job and your manager does the same thing. And without realizing it, without being intentional about it, you start like a hamster on a wheel, pedaling harder and harder to get the reward. And that works fine up to a point. And then one day you realize, man, I'm pedaling really hard and I'm not feeling any joy. So what's wrong with this picture? And that's where I was in my mid-40s. And that's a very good point. Very often this is called the midlife crisis. And this syndrome of the hamster on the wheel is called the hedonic treadmill. So it turns out I'm not unique. It's common to a lot of high achievers, ambitious people of the sorts who are tuning into this conversation. And then you have to get off that treadmill and start searching for your own internal understanding of what is success and what is happiness. And I've spent about a decade doing that. I think it's still an evolving thing, a moving goalpost, but I think I'm remarkably less confused than I was a decade ago. The most important learning for me is this thing called happiness, which is what eventually drives all of us. We want to be happy. Happiness is a very elusive thing, and it's elusive because it is not real. It's manufactured by the mind. And you can see that by looking at people who have nothing and they're still joyous, and somebody else has everything, you see, and they're miserable. Okay, when you look at these extremes and then you see yourself, you realize that what you have in your life makes very little difference to whether you're happy or not. It's actually a choice, and you have to train the mind to do these things. Okay, so that's one. And the second idea that is important is that success is something that you have to choose for yourself. Most of us are living with a pre-programmed, conditioned definition of success that we picked up over the years. You pick it up from your family, you pick it up from society, you pick it up from your peers, etc. And too often, for this group, the 1 billion people that are not very different from us, for us, success is about economic achievement and climbing a ladder and being recognized for that, and so on and so forth. And yeah, there is a certain threshold that you need to have in order to feel successful. If you're not at that threshold, then it's very hard to say money doesn't matter. Only people who say money doesn't matter who are those who've crossed that threshold of need. And so after that, you have to do experiments to figure out what would be meaningful to you. So I did a ton of experiments, and finally I've decided that the most useful quote is in fact in the last chapter of the book, and I want to read it out for the people who are listening but may not read it. This is from James March at Stanford, and he says, look, in the end, we're very minor blips in a cosmic story, and all our hopes are minor except to us. Very few things matter, but what might make a difference is if in our tiny roles, in our brief time, we inhabit life gently and add more beauty than ugliness. So I said, this is just the most wonderful definition. It has stayed with me for many years now. And so I think the answer is to figure out, how can I make the world a little bit more beautiful, a little bit less ugly, using the unique skills and assets that I have?